Another MAGA lie has come home to roost. This time we're talking about another right-wing media outlet, Newsmax, caught selling the big lie about the 2020 election. And once again, we're finding out that the truth has a price tag, and now Newsmax has to pay a lot of money to Dominion Voting. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. Brian, give us some context here. What are we talking about? The 2020 election, lies, election interference?
Well, Sean, it turns out that the truth hurts, right? And apparently it hurts this particular company, Newsmax, to the tune of $67 million. Now, that's a little less than 10% of what Fox paid, but maybe that reflects the viewership of Newsmax over Fox these days. And I know you're going to talk a little bit about the background of Newsmax. Actually, why don't you jump right into that and talk about a little bit about what we know about Newsmax?
Sure. Newsmax is a right-wing news network. I think maybe calling them a news network is sort of giving them way too much credit.
Yeah,
what?
Charitable.
Yeah, I think it's generous to call them, to refer to them as a news network. But it's run by a guy named Christopher Ruddy, who actually has, friends on both sides of the aisle. He fancies himself more of a libertarian and a Reaganite, even though he's not a registered Republican. And they were formed a while ago, but they got traction in the lead up to the 2020 election when Trump started promoting them. And no, I'm not misspeaking. It's not that Newsmax was necessarily promoting Trump. Trump was promoting them, which is kind of wild to say that a presidential candidate who was a sitting president and who's now a sitting president again would go out there and promote a particular news network. But that's what it was. It was like he was doing a press junket. He promoted them over Fox because he had a falling out with Fox and they weren't loyal enough, I guess. But anyway, and they recently actually have had sort of a meteoric rise and fall after going public. They're actually publicly traded under the symbol NMAX. And they had a huge surge in value and in fact surpassed Fox. But then they crashed. A lot of commentators on this and people that watch the stock market referred to it as kind of like a meme stock in the news world. And that's kind of what they are. They're sort of a meme. I don't know if I really want to call them a news network. And they became a puppet for the far right and for MAGA and for Trump. And one of the things that they promoted was that Dominion Voting interfered with the 2020 election by switching votes from Trump to Biden, of course.
Right. So
Trump lost the 2020 election, just for the record, and there's been no proof that there was any fraud or any type of interference like the one that they talked about. And this is what this is all about.
Yeah. So basically, this is exactly what it's about. It's very similar to the well-known lawsuit that Dominion brought against Fox, which is reporting these lies that the Dominion voting machines were rigged so that they could rig the election in favor of Biden. There's been absolutely no evidence of that. Dominion, after this came out, said, look, you've hurt our reputation. You've defamed us. This is reputational damage. You've hurt our business, our entire business model by making these lies and making it impossible for us to do the work that we're doing. And so they brought a lawsuit. Back in June of 2022, the judge in Delaware refused to throw the lawsuit out. Newsmax tried to get the lawsuit thrown out. That failed. And then just this past spring, Dominion brought a very large motion for summary judgment, basically saying that the statements were per se defamatory. So you may be asking, Shant, as some of our listeners may, what are these statements that they've been making? Well, we talked about the most obvious one, which is that Dominion, several times after the election, started spreading these lies. Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, my favorite, Mr. MyPillow, Mike Lindell, all got on there and talked about how the Dominion machines were rigged.
Very interesting cast of characters, right? Just like some of the best of the Hall of Fame of the MAGA Muppets or the MAGA Misfits. Just, yeah.
Exactly.
Giuliani.
Exactly. And I mean, that's sort of the most well-known is that. But then they went on from there to allege, I'm not talking about those individuals, I'm talking about the network, that there were ties to Venezuela and that that they were involved. Hugo Chavez, who's the president, I believe, of Venezuela, was behind this and working with Dominion to rig the election. And what's really interesting about this, I mean, there's certainly more. And there's certainly more that they said, kickbacks to government officials, that they were paying off the government officials for the use of the machines, general election fraud in general. But the thing that really gets me here, and it's very similar to Fox, is that the executives, including the CEO, Chris Ruddy, were actually expressing skepticism about this at the time of the broadcast or before the broadcast, saying, I don't know that this is true.
Yeah.
I mean, apparently there's internal documents that came out that said that they were expressing skepticism.
Nevertheless, probably didn't help their defense. It probably didn't help Newsmax's defense, right? Whenever we do cases, because we do civil cases all the time, and whenever there's claims about, the other side having notice, because that's a big issue in a case like this, because you have to make knowingly false statements in order to prove a defamation case. Whenever you have stuff like, oh, guys, we should be careful about this. Whenever you see skepticism, it's like, okay, there you go. I mean, you knew or had reason to suspect that this was bullshit, and you still allowed it to be published and broadcast on air. And that's probably what did them in on this summary judgment motion.
Well, and I think, Shant, that what this also demonstrates is that it's probably because they're the networks, and there's another network out there also, One American News Network, OAN. We'll talk about them in a second. But you've got these three, predominant conservative television networks, Fox, OAN, and whatever it is, and this one, Newsmax, competing for viewers. And if they're not telling these far right nut jobs what they want to hear, if they're not out there saying, it's a fixed election, it's a rigged election, they're going to lose viewers. I mean, to me, and I remember back at the time of this election, I remember what was going on. And it's a little bit like, you're watching a college football game and your team loses and you blame the ref. You want to find some reason and some justification for why your guy lost.
Yeah. And if someone's talking about, how this ref is crooked, how the ref has got it wrong, you're going to listen to him. Even if it's bullshit, you're going to listen to him. And, there's some degree of like importance and gravitas that we grant to a channel that's on the air. And they took advantage of that. And
well, maybe not anymore. I mean, maybe not anymore. So, there is a price, and this is the price, and they have to pay money. And hopefully what this ends up becoming is some sort of, lesson to these
deterrent.
Networks.
You think it'll be a deterrent? Oh, yeah. I'm sure Rudy Giuliani really regrets this, and Newsmax is out there saying, guys, we shouldn't do this anymore. And
no, but I mean, look, people like Rudy Giuliani aren't going to care, but some of these broadcast journalists, which I can put in quotes, might think twice. I mean, that's the whole idea behind this. And what's interesting to me, Sean, is that instead of handing over a check for $67 million, Newsmax is paying this in 3 installments.
Yeah.
Which, leads me to believe that they may not have a ton of cash sitting around,
Well, the amount that they agreed to settle it for leads me to believe that they don't have a ton of cash sitting around. The fact that Dominion agreed to this, because they could have probably squeezed more out of them. Like, they got $787 million out of Fox. They could have probably sought more or demanded more out of Newsmax, but they probably realized, and this is a calculation we often have to make if we're in litigation with a defendant who doesn't have money. They're pleading poverty, and maybe they looked at it and they thought, look, we could take, less than 100 million from these guys, or we can seek more and they'll file bankruptcy. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's what happened. I don't want some Newsmax person to be watching this and saying, oh, these guys are misrepresented. I don't know. But just based on my experience, our experience litigating cases, you don't always get the true value of the case. Somebody might be horribly injured, but the responsible party might not have enough money to cover it. So instead of pushing them into bankruptcy and never seeing a dollar, you take what you can. And this might have been a calculation that Dominion had to make and take whatever they could. And you're right. The fact that it's in installments tells me that they don't have that kind of cash laying around.
Yeah. My final thought on this, Sean, is that Dominion's not done with suing, right? They're suing Mr. MyPillow, Mike Lindell. They've got a lawsuit pending against him. Interestingly, about Mike Lindell, we've talked about him before in his lawsuit and what this guy's gone through to promote these false claims. He got hit for over $2 million by one of the employees of Dominion recently in a trial. He still has the lawsuit against Dominion pending over him. Apparently, Lindell told the court that his net worth was $60 million before, and it's now dropped to $10 million because he's lost contract, lost business, which is the price you pay. I mean, that's the price he pays, and he's going to lose more money. He's going to, continue to lose this. I don't know what ultimately is going to happen. Rudy Giuliani's a defendant in case he's filed bankruptcy. Sidney Powell, the lawyer for Trump for like a hot minute, she's been sued. This other network's been sued. So there is a price to pay. And this is the justice system. And as somebody who has spent my entire adult life supporting the civil justice system, this demonstrates that, not every day, but most days it works.
Yeah, this is the justice system at work. That's exactly right. That's what gives me hope about this. And look, sometimes civil action is a means by which we the people can go around and enforce their rights. The phrase that comes to mind is play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You do this for ratings. This is what happens. You get hit with something like this. And, you had the Fox case, you had Newsmax. Brian talked about the One American News Network case. All of this is a good sign that, there's people fighting back, and there's a way to hold these puppets that Trump is working through, these intermediaries, these minions that he has. There's a way to hold them accountable, and soon people are going to distance themselves from him. I think that's what's happening here. This is an interesting issue. We'll keep up to date on the OANN case that's going on, and we'll report back on that. I'm Shant Karnikian. That's Brian Kabateck. This is Civil Action on the Legal AF Network. If you like this content, hit that subscribe button. Love to hear your feedback, and we'll see you on the next one.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.